Welcome back. We've implemented footstep sounds and particles, and we need to implement a jump sound and a jump landing sound. Now, if you look in your assets folder /sounds/rifle, there's this SW Foley Jump O2 cue, and it sounds pretty appropriate for a jump. So we're going to play this when we jump. Now we can go into our character folder and double click on Shooter Anim BP to open the animation blueprint. Now I have a whole bunch of things open here. I'm going to go ahead and close out of all but the animation blueprint. Okay, so I have my animation blueprint. Now I'm going to take a look at the anim graph and go all the way out and go into locomotion and jumps and enter the jumps state machine and go to jump start and see that we have a jump start animation. I'm going to double click on that, and here's our jump start animation. Here's a good spot to place an anim notify for jumping. So right about the point where Bellica is about to leave the ground, I'm going to play a sound notify. So I'm going to right click in the notifies track, add notify, and play sound. I'm going to select this play sound, and here is where I'll select the jump sound. Now let's go back into the assets sounds folder and go into rifle, and we have our SW Foley Jump O2 cue. I'm going to rename this and call this jump start, and that just makes it easier and more consistent for us. So in the jump start animation with the play sound notify selected, I'm going to type jump start and use the jump start cue. Let's go ahead and save this and play test this. I'm going to jump first thing, and it sounds a little late, so I'm going to go back to the jump start animation and drag the cue back a little bit so it's a little earlier. Let's try this again. I think I'm okay with that. So that takes care of our jump start sound. I'm going to click save and close out of the jump start animation. Now we need to take care of the jump landing sound. For this, I'm going to create a new notify. So let's go into our anim notifies folder, right click, create a new blueprint class, open the drop down for all classes and type anim notify, and select anim notify. Close the drop down so we get our select button back and click select. I'm going to call this jump land notify. Now before we even open this, we need to add this notify to our jump land animation. So let's go back into our Shooter Anim BP, back out to the jump state, back out to locomotion, and here we have our jump land state. Now here's an additive animation called jump recovery additive. Double click on it, and here's our jump land animation. So right at the beginning of the animation, I'm going to add a notify, and that notify will be the jump land notify. So I'm going to click save, and now we need to implement this notify. So let's double click to open jump land notify, and for our functions we're going to click override and received notify. Now here is where we're going to play a landing sound. Now we're going to need to know the surface that we're landing on, and for that we can call our blueprint callable function getSurfaceType. Now we need to call this from the character, so we're going to get that from our mesh comp. We're going to drag mesh comp, type getOwner, and we're going to cast the owner to shooter character BP. So cast to shooter character BP, and from this node we're going to call getSurfaceType. That gives us the surface type, and we can simply switch on ePhysicalSurface. So drag off of the return value, type switch, and we'll get a switch on ePhysicalSurface node. Click the drop down and we get all the physical surfaces. Now we're going to drag off of default and use play sound at location, and for the sound we're going to right click and promote to a local variable and call this landing sound. And we'll hook this up to return node and click the checkbox for the return value. Now landing sound can have a default value if we want. Let's type jump land. And we'll see that we have some options here. Now we need to browse our sounds to see what kind of landing sounds we have. So let's go back into sounds, footsteps, and let's see if we have some jump landing sounds. So here in the footsteps folder, we're going to look at jump land sounds. So I'm going to search for land, and we have several options here. Now we have a single sound for jump land water. I'm going to right click, create a queue for that, and I'm going to call this land underscore water. Now this will just have a single sound in it, but in the future, if you decide to add more sounds, you can add them to this and create a random node. I'm going to save that and close it. Now here we have 3 jump land grass sounds. I want to right click on one, create a queue, and call this land underscore grass. Now let's open land grass. We have the first one. Let's take 2 and 3 and drag those into land grass. And we can highlight all 3, create a random node, and plug that into the output. All right, let's save that, close out a land grass, and let's make one for metal. So here's a metal jump land. Let's right click, create a queue, and call this land underscore metal. We'll open that, and we'll take the other 2, metal 02 and 03, drag them in, and we'll make a random out of these 3. And plug that in. We'll click save and close. And here we have some tile jump land sounds. Let's create a queue. Call this land underscore tile. We'll open that and get 2 and 3, bring those in, and make a random node, and plug that in. And save and close. And that leaves these gravel jump lands. There's a concrete and a gravel 2. Let's create a queue from the concrete. Call this land underscore stone. Let's open that up. And I'll take the 2 gravel sounds and drag those in, and we'll make a random out of these. We'll save that, close out of it, and now we have grass, metal, stone, tile, and water. So here in the jump land notify, we can simply set landing sound with a setter. So I'm going to plug the default in, and for the default case, I'll just use tile. So we'll use land tile. Now let's copy this a few times. One for metal, stone, tile, grass, and water. Now for the metal, we're going to use land metal. For stone, we'll use land stone. For tile, we'll use land tile. It's already set there. And for grass, we're going to use land grass. And finally, we have one for water. And we'll use land water. Now for all of these, we'll plug the output pins into the play sound at location node. That way, no matter which one we set, we'll always play the sound using landing sound. Now for location, we can simply get the owner, get actor location, and hook that in to the location. Now let's go ahead, compile this, and hit play. Now when we jump and we land, we get that default sound, but when we land on different surfaces, we get a different sound. Let's check it out. Here's tile, here's metal, here is the gravel or rock, here's grass, and finally water. Beautiful. Now let's say we want to spawn the particles as we land? Well, if we used our other notify, the one we created called footsteps notify, then we would also get the footstep sound, but we don't want the footstep sound. But we can create a Boolean in this footsteps notify that allows us to check to see if we want to play the footsteps sound or not. And then we can use that footsteps notify when we land as well. So let's go ahead and create a variable here. It's going to be a Boolean, and we're going to call this should play sound. Now compile and give should play sound a default value of true by checking it here in the default value section in the details panel. And then we can hold B and create a branch. And we're going to hook all of these wires up to the branch like this. And then hook the branch up to play sound at location. But for the false case of the branch, we're going to hook this straight up to spawn system at location. So if should play sound is true, we'll play the sound and spawn the system. But if should play sound is false, we'll just spawn this particle system. Go ahead and compile this and save. Now should play sound has a default value of true. So if we were to go into our animation blueprint and we go into our asset browser and look for jog forward, for example, and we look at jog forward and click on one of the notifies, we don't see the Boolean because we need to go into footsteps notify and make it editable and compile. Now in jog forward, we can see should play sound and it's checked by default. So all of these will play the sound. But we can go into our jump land animation by going into locomotion, jump land, and finding jump recovery additive. Here is our jump land notify. We can actually add a new track and add a new notify, and we'll use footsteps notify and select it, and we can uncheck should play sound here. And now this notify will only spawn the particle system. So let's go ahead and hit play, and let's land on some surfaces. It's a little hard to see on the tile. Let's land on the metal. Yep, I can see it. There's a particle system being spawned. Let's jump on the grass. That one's a little easier to see. And there's our grass. It's pretty hard to see, but I can see it. You can take a look on your screen. Okay. So we now have jump start sounds and jump land sounds, and the jump land sounds are the correct jump land sound for the surface type. And we've also added a Boolean to our footsteps notify called should play sound, which allows us to prevent playing the sound if that Boolean is false in the notify. So congratulations, we now have a footstep system that will play a different sound and spawn a different particle system depending on the surface we're on. And this is expandable. You can get more assets, more sounds that correspond to different surface types, more particle systems, and make your game work for a bunch of different environments. Great job. I'll see you in the next video.